Some of you might remember last year how I went up to Yosemite Valley and shot an expired roll of Fuji Reala 100. Just like many other film stocks, this is one that Fuji no longer makes, and overall the greens are amazing, the tones are amazing. It's just a film stock I really love, and I'd love to try it in medium format for that matter. In any case, this year I did go back up to Yosemite Valley, and this time I really wanted to push my expired brand limits, so I shot the most expired film that I have ever had. The film that I decided to shoot was some 1957 expired Gevaert Gevachrome 30, and this is a very old film, over 70 years old at this point, and it was a very generous gift from the folks at Not Quite North in Lincoln, which is in the United Kingdom. So thank you guys for that, and I will make sure to share a link to their website in my bio. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Gevaert, this is a Belgian company. They were established about the turn of the century, and they were one of the main film manufacturers in Europe leading up to World War II. They actually existed as their own company until 1964, at which point they actually merged with Agfa, and this company still exists to this day as Agfa Gevaert, and you could actually still buy film related products for them even if they are repackaged Ilford film. I do believe they actually do make some of their own film, but in any case I decided to really just overexpose the ever-living crap out of it given the insane age, and I shot this at 10 ISO, and I put it actually in my Agfa Isolet 3, which is a camera I have reviewed in the past, and it's a really fitting 1950s folder to go alongside this old film. And that wasn't just the only camera and film that I brought for this trip, of course. I also brought along my Pentax 6.7, multitude of films, Portra 400, Gold 200, Ektar, and even some Plus-X Pan, another expired black and white film. In any case, I started out quick with some Gold 200 in the hope of some good weather. These hopes were quickly dashed, however, as the valley was socked in with rain and snow. Of course, this didn't stop me from flexing on my Patagucci clothing and refreshments all the while. The rain did lift in the evening, however, and I was quickly out and about with a Pentax 6.7 and a 250mm lens. I will say with this 200mm Takumar lens, it is a chonky chonkster, and I do have a pretty sturdy tripod, but I was really just unsure how this was going to handle such a heavy lens, and in the end it was a mixed bag. I had a few photos that came out okay and a few that did not. This was as good of a time as any to whip out the old Gevachrome 30 and my Agfa Isolet 3. This is the true definition of a period appropriate combo. It almost felt illegal breaking the seal on this ancient packaging, but everything looked good on the inside. It looked like it was all pretty well sealed, and because it's a 64 ISO film, I did shoot it at about 10 ISO. So just these initial first couple photos with the Gevachrome 30, I gotta say it's a pretty successful start. You can actually see the photos, and that in my book is a success. Even if you do have this texturing from the backing paper after 70 years and you do have a little more grain, you can actually get a lot of detail out of the shadows with this film, and that in my mind is absolutely insane. And really, without that texturing from the backing paper, I would say these would actually be fairly usable photos, which is just awesome. It was about this time that I switched from Kodak Gold to Portra 400. I took it as a chance to get a side-by-side comparison of the two stocks, and honestly the difference is pretty negligible. Both stocks really maintain a lot of highlight and shadow detail, although Portra does hold a slight edge. Just the fact that there's that price difference between the two, I'd say that Gold 200 is a pretty good bet to go with. These compositions here along the Merced River I'm quite fond of. Overall, it's just a classic composition of the valley, but nonetheless, the fact that you have these logs here and I was able to get a long exposure, it looked quite nice in the end. I'm pretty stoked with how this photo of Bridevale Falls turned out. You have these clouds moving through, you have that last bit of light on the rocks above. Overall, just a composition I was really lucky to find. Despite the initial rainy weather for the day, it did create some cool conditions going forward. This includes some insane twilight fog. Low-lying fog in Yosemite Valley has been on my bucket list for a while, so I was pretty stoked to see this. So overall, first successful day in Yosemite, even though there was a little rain and I was shooting with that 70-year-old expired film. I did get some awesome photos in the end of that fog in the evening. Those were, as I said, 7-minute exposures, so I was quite lucky to actually get anything out of it. I was really just guessing the reciprocity failure of this Kodak Gold, and let's just see what awaits us tomorrow. Well, top of the morning here in Yosemite Valley. It's feeling pretty brisk by May standards. And because of all that shitty weather yesterday, I'm hoping to get a little morning fog here in the valley, so fingers crossed for that. And of course, fingers crossed for that 70-year-old film I got. I'm shooting it at 10 ISO, as I said, so I'm pretty much just keeping it on my tripod for the day. Of course, at some time I did have to go up to tunnel view, but suffice to say, shooting straight into the morning sun was no bueno. Even though you guys might not be so crazy about this photo, I'm glad to have gotten it, where you have both Bridevale Falls in the background and then you have this little one in the foreground. This is one I kind of had to hike into a little bit, and it's a composition I haven't really seen before. And with Yosemite Valley, of course, that's a massive challenge to find something quote unquote original. So this was my try at it, and overall quite happy with it. As the morning light slowly changed to midday light, I decided to finish off that roll of Gevachrome. I still can't get over the fact that the film held up so well. If it wasn't for that texture from the backing paper, these photos would have really turned out pretty decent. There were well-defined shadows, highlights, and midtones. Wasn't really muddy or anything. If anything, it reminds me of shooting contemporary Adox CH2 which is a stock that really just resembles those classic ortho and ortho panchromatic films of the 50s and 60s. So, successful morning, of shooting in Yosemite Valley. Now that we got that harsh midday light, I figured we'd go up into the high country towards Glacier Point and actually go to Sentinel Dome, which I'd never been to before. Right now the cloud cover is really nice, and I hope it looks well on this expired Plus-X Pan. So, you know, just fingers crossed. So a couple shots in, you can definitely tell that this expired Plus-X Pan is a little crunchy. I've had great results in the past with this stock, but this might not be a repeat of it. In any case, I'll dive into that later. And shout out to Freewell. They actually gave me some magnetic filters last year in Yosemite to play around with. And this year they actually gave me a travel tripod for my iPhone when I'm filming these videos. And that's quite nice because I can actually use the flexible legs to wrap it around my normal tripod. So that's a nice 2-for-1 there. Though it's not much of an out-of-the-way hike or just an unknown place or anything, I would say I was pretty stoked with going to Sentinel Dome for the first time. The view up there is outstanding, arguably better than Glacier Point because you get that view of El Cap as well. And just with this cloud cover, I was really lucky. Super dynamic lighting and just a good spot to snack and just shoot a bunch of photos with that good old Plus-X Pan. So yeah, with this double 220 roll of Plus-X Pan, I would say that the grain is a lot more pronounced. The shadows are a good bit muddier, and you do have some just general inconsistencies. I have quite a few pro packs of this Plus-X Pan 220, and for the most part, they all look pretty decent. But I remember one of these pro packs did have some subpar results just in the past. Nonetheless, I forgot which pro pack that was, so when I grabbed a roll, it was pretty much just a game of Russian roulette, and in this case, I lost that expired game of roulette. Even so though, this was kind of just some midday shooting, just spraying and praying and seeing what happens, so there wasn't much loss in the end, and there are some decent photos here, so I'm not going to be all Debbie Downer about the whole situation. I also decided to hedge my bets and load up a quick roll of Ektar. With lighting conditions and landscapes like this, Ektar was just a real no-brainer. At this point, it was getting kind of close to evening time, so I figured I'd just scurry back down to the valley real quick. To finish off the evening in Yosemite, I met up with my good friend Blake Johnston. If you're not familiar with your work, I definitely suggest checking it out on Instagram, for example. He is the ultimate Yosemite large format color transparency photographer. I mean, his work is nothing short of insane. It's amazing. So yeah, this photo of the pond in Yosemite Valley just turned out simply insane. I can't believe I got this photo. The lighting was just super dynamic, and of course shooting with Ektar, the sky's the limit in my mind. So this is easily one of my favorite photos of the entire trip. It also happened to be the legendary dogwood blossom season in the valley, so of course I had to cover my bases there. Close out the day, Blake and I found a nice little bend in the Merced River, and I was pretty blessed to have a great view and just a little sliver of evening light. So to conclude, I would say it was a pretty successful trip to Yosemite. I had that Gevachrome 30 7-year-old film that somehow turned out decent. I don't know how. And then of course you had some good old Pentax 6.7, Gold 200, Ektar 100, Portra 400 photos, and of course the Plus-X Pan. So overall, just a lot of photos I'm happy with. And maybe next year I'll go back to Yosemite if I have the time, film, and money. And for that, maybe I'll just turn back the clock even more and shoot some, I don't know, 1860s expired glass plates or whatever. In any case, maybe just stick around till then, and I'll have a few more videos coming out soon, so stick around for those as well.